You are now listening to On One Radio, the talk show podcast station, bringing you the current events and issues. All information and resources are based on the opinions of the host unless otherwise noted. This podcast may contain some quotations, images, and/or excerpts from copyrighted material. These uses fall well within the copyright doctrine of fair use. This is your news report, and I am your host, Tony. Welcome. You are listening to the news report. I am your host, Tony, and this is On One Radio. Now, these news reports, it's a lot going on. And these are pretty much the headlines. But it's pretty much going down when it comes to prisons, correction officers, the police, and all these government facilities, government-ran facilities, let's say that. It's going down. A lot has been going on. So first up, we're going to be talking about a California corrections officer. Now, I'm pretty sure everybody's talking about this, and everyone has so many opinions about this. So let's get into it. All right, corrections officer out of California. There was an investigation that was tipped off back in December of 2019 about an inmate with a cell phone and rumored to be in a sexual relationship with the officer. Yes, and we know these things do happen. Now, this officer who had sex with an inmate in full view of 11 others is crazy. This is absolute madness. Now, she also gave the inmate raises as well as her allegedly cutting a hole in her uniform to make sex with the inmate easier, and her actions were witnessed by multiple other inmates. Now, Officer Gonzalez, who's 26 years old, actually pleaded no contest to a felony court of sexual activity by a detention facility employee with a consenting confined adult, a felony count of possession of drugs or an alcoholic beverage in a jail facility, and a misdemeanor count of possession of cellular device with intent to deliver to an inmate. Now, the Assistant District Attorney, Steve Wright, confirmed this to People. So, okay, let's stop for a minute. Stop the show. What the hell? Are you serious? You're a corrections officer. Like, there is no one outside of the prison you want. It has to be an inmate. Well, might as well say inmates, because I'm pretty sure if she's having sex in front of other inmates, 9 times out of 10, she's had sex with those inmates too. And the part about the consenting confined adult, he's confined. He doesn't have anywhere to go. And what happens if he says no? Then what happens to him? That's a catch-22, and that's a very big one. So let's have the excuse or excuses of why and how. Well, the recent end of her marriage at the time of her actions, it stated, made Gonzalez vulnerable. I don't buy that. Women get divorced all the time. And you can't throw in vulnerable. Because 9 times out of 10, it's one of those rebound situations where you just go have sex with someone else, to get over what you're going through, or at least to ease the pain, quote unquote. And not everybody does this, but some do. So that's not a legitimate excuse. It's just, I don't think there's any excuse for this. So what does she have to say about her actions? Well, through her attorney, it was stated that it was never her intention to bring any harm or danger to the employees in the jail or anyone else in the jail. Martin, Her defense attorney also stated Gonzalez took responsibility for her actions. No, she did not. Because if there was an excuse, then there was no taking responsibility for her actions. Now, the former California corrections officer will serve 210 days locked up, followed by 2 years of probation, which, as we all know, is indeed a slap on her pretty little wrist. The prosecution recommended a sentence of 16 months in prison. Probation was requested by her lawyer. This is insane. This female destroyed her career trying to get the bag. She destroyed getting the bag over some penis. I don't get it, but it is what it is, and she doesn't seem to be ashamed nor remorseful. Of course, she has a backup for quick cash with the GoFundMe page. We know some people are donating to this brand of fuckery without hesitation. Sadly, this is the bullshit ideology and logic so many operate on without actually thinking about it. This woman was wrong. You are in a position of power. That is abuse. And her giving an inmate a weapon, that weapon could have been used against her. It could have been used against her co-workers or other inmates. That is a huge violation, and that slap on the wrist is not satisfactory. By no means. She should truly be held accountable. Really should be held accountable. So let me drop a few statistics on you. When it comes to physical assault behind bars, 19% of all inmates in the U.S. prisons say they've been physically assaulted by other inmates. 21% say they've been assaulted by prison staff. 21. That is so much higher and more than the typical idea of inmates attacking other inmates. It's higher with being assaulted by prison staff. What does that say? So let's further go into these. Sexual assault behind bars. Officials reported fewer than 8,000 incidents of rape and other sexual victimization in all prisons and jails in 2011. Yet between 3% and 9% of male inmates say they have been sexually assaulted behind bars, which suggests more than 180,000 current prisoners may have been victimized. Former inmates of private state prisons are half as likely to say they have been sexually victimized by another inmate as those who were in public state prisons. However, they are nearly twice as likely to report being sexually victimized by staff. 66% of incidents of sexual misconduct by prison staff involve sexual relationships with inmates who appear to be willing. Now, that's according to authorities. Again, let me say this. With these guys being in prison, what happens to them if they say no? If they reject these women prison guards, what happens to them then? More than likely, I'm pretty sure they fear retaliation, so they go ahead and go through with it. Now, that's my opinion on that part. What do you all think about that? Now, as far as women, 7% of total prison population, 22% of all victims of inmate-on-inmate sexual victimization, 33% of all victims of staff-on-inmate sexual victimizations. 33%, you all. Just like with the 21% for the men, it's higher than inmate-on-inmate. And the numbers don't lie. Now, just imagine how many of these incidents have not been reported at all. It says a lot about United States prison system, jail system. What do you all think about that part? Let me know. If you're listening to this on YouTube, comment in the box below. If you're listening to this on one of the podcast outlets, feedback is wonderful. I appreciate it. And give me your thoughts. I want to hear them. Now, moving along, speaking of government-ran facilities, there's a headline out on a situation that took place over the years, and not just with one person, but multiple people, where they have been victimized and abused in a state-ran facility, and apparently are not getting any justice. Now, attorneys for New Hampshire's state-run youth detention center are suggesting that a man who claims he was physically and sexually assaulted by multiple counselors as a teen was partially responsible for at least some of the alleged abuse. Stop. Hold the presses right there. How does that work? How can you blame a victim for at least some of the abuse that they received? This is insane. Now, David Meehan sued the Sununu-Youth-Services-Center. That's the agency overseeing it, and half a dozen of former employees in January of 2020, alleging that he endured nearly daily beatings and rapes in the late 90s at what was then called the Youth Development Center. More than 300 men and women later came forward with similar allegations spanning over 6 decades. But a judge dismissed their class action lawsuit in May, and their attorney is now preparing hundreds of individual lawsuits. What does it sound like to you all? They're trying to get out of trouble, is what it sounds like to me. Now, that's just my opinion on that part. What do you all think? Now, the Attorney General's office representing the youth center filed a response to Meehan's lawsuit, citing Meehan's contribution to his negligence as a defense. Now, they didn't elaborate, and it was also said some of Meehan's claims are barred because the staff's actions were justified or excused due to it being necessary to maintain order and to protect the safety of the facility, its staff, and residents. How is being sexually abused, being raped, how is that excused? Daily beatings? How is that excused? These are people. These are not animals. This is not right by any standard. And let's look into contributory negligence. Well, it's pretty much a way for the state to say that this man and these other people are to blame for the torture, rape, and abuse that they endured at the hands of the government systems, institution, and employees. And Meehan did have a statement, and now Meehan is 39 years old, and he said in a phone interview, these people were allowed to do the unthinkable and get paid for it. And now they're being protected while me and my family suffer. This is horrific. And it's a telltale sign of what has more than likely been going on for more than decades. And it's sad that these people in the positions of power are abusing their power. And I have to agree with him. They were getting paid to do these horrible things to him and others. How is that right? What can be done about this? It needs to all be overhauled. They need to go back all over the records. They need to have cameras in there that are not ran by necessarily the facility. They should have a quote-unquote big brother watching them. I mean, they have cameras all over stoplights. Anywhere else you go, there are cameras. Why not have cameras there? So that's a big one. Now, in addition to physical and sexual abuse, Meehan also alleges that he was repeatedly held in solitary confinement and denied an education. Now, he was a youth. How can you do this to kids? How is this acceptable? Solitary confinement, and then you deny them an education, but this is supposed to be a government-ran facility? So what does that say about how they feel about the youth? They don't give two shits about the youth, apparently. Like, none at all. Now, the state didn't specify which claims it was referring to, and Assistant Attorney General Jennifer Ramsey declined to comment. But in a written response, the state denied Meehan's broad accusations that negligence in hiring, training, and supervising workers led to abuse, and that it failed to either properly investigate allegations or remove perpetrators. It also denied that officials intentionally concealed information from the law. Okay, stop. I don't buy that at all. At all. Do you all? This is sad. It's really sad. It's frustrating. And it does anger me a bit. It does. Because it's wrong. You don't do this to children. And there have been so many other facilities where these same type of issues happen. And I do believe that there was negligence in hiring, training, and supervising workers, and that is what led to the abuse. And it did fail to properly investigate allegations and even remove perpetrators. And did they intentionally conceal information from the law enforcement? Hell yes, because they don't want to get in trouble. Now, with regards to Meehan's specific abuse allegations, however, the state repeatedly said it lacked sufficient information to either admit or deny the claims. Okay, that is contradictory to what they said before that. See, there are so many red flags, and we really do have to read between the lines on situations like this. This seriously needs to be investigated, and I don't think there's a statutory limit on this sort of thing. But they need to do some deep diving and come up with the truth. And all those who were working at that time all need to be questioned. They all need to take a lie detector test. And they need to speak to some other people and find out exactly what went on. Now, for example, the state confirmed that Meehan asked to see a nurse in 1998, but neither confirmed nor denied his account that the nurse told him his bruised face and broken nose appeared self-inflicted. Who the hell is sitting back, busting and breaking up their own body parts in a situation like this for, let's say, attention or something? Who does this to self? Nobody wants to do that. That is painful. Now, it confirmed his trip to the hospital after another incident without admitting or denying that he had passed out on a softball field during a violent rape. It just goes deeper and deeper, and this shit is insane. And these people need to be held accountable for it. Now, Meehan's attorney, Russ Riley, called the state's defense shocking and insulting to Meehan and other victims. The state's position that David contributed to his own abuse, beatings, rapes, and solitary confinement, and that the abuse was in some way justified is quite simply appalling, he stated. To blame any survivor, let alone a child, for the sexual and physical abuse they suffered is disgusting, and the state should be ashamed of itself. Okay, speaking of the state being ashamed for itself, this situation would have to take a number to that because it is so much. It is so much. And this just adds to that list of what the state should be ashamed of. And it's not just this state, it's every state. Every state in the United States of America has secrets. They have covered up something, especially dealing with youth facilities, prisons, jailhouses, mistreatment, rape, being beat. It says where we are as a country. Now, Raleigh represents more than 300 men and women who say they were physically and sexually abused as children by 150 staffers from 1960 to 2018, including gang rapes, being forced to fight each other for food, and being locked down in solitary confinement for weeks or months. The recently adopted state budget calls for closing the center by March 2023 and replacing it with a much smaller facility. Now, as far as criminal charges, some have been brought against several of the staffers that he accused of abuse, while one division of the Attorney General's office has been defending the state against the lawsuit. The criminal division launched a broad investigation into the center and its operation in 2019, and 11 former staffers were arrested in April. 3 of them were charged with sexually assaulting Meehan, and 1 was charged with serving as a lookout. So it just gets worse. This sort of thing has to stop. It is not right, and these people should be held accountable. And the bad part about it is, these people had so much time to do the right thing that it made no sense, but they chose not to. They chose to continuously do the wrong thing, which shows a lack of caring, remorse, honesty. They should be behind bars for a very long time. You cannot keep doing things like this and expect for it not to come out. What's done in the dark always comes out, whether you want it to or not. And in my opinion, these staffers are guilty. They're very much so guilty. Even if they didn't touch any of these people, just by them keeping their mouths shut and protecting the others who did, makes them guilty. So they're in the same boat. They're an accessory. All prisons, all jails, all youth facilities need to be checked, because there is so much going on, and especially when you're dealing with children. The state took an oath to protect, just like the staffers did. They all took an oath, and they were getting paid to do a job that they were not doing. They were doing everything else except for their actual job duties. So no, it's not right. You guys let me know what you think about this, and if you have any new information to add to this, hit me up. You can always email me at oneradiotalk@gmail.com. I welcome your feedback, and much love and respect goes out to all of you. You have been listening to On One Radio, the talk show podcast station, bringing you the current events and issues. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my news report. I wish you the best. For more, you can find On One Radio on Facebook, YouTube. The name over there is Tony On One, and it is available on most of your favorite podcast sites and apps. If there is a news report that you would like to share, email onOneRadioTalk@gmail.com. Place it to the attention of news reports. Stay safe, take care, and be well. There's always another story.